All right, so what I'd like to talk today about is pose-driven clothing. Um, Earlier, what I did was when I did clothing design, all I drew was just a very basic standing pose, and basically drew whatever clothing kind of came to mind. But what I found is that whenever I look at fashion magazines and I see ads for fashion, um, I kind of like how they have, what seems like spontaneous photography. They show the character standing in different poses. And one thing I learned from that is that some poses, some clothing actually looks good in certain poses, and some poses look good in certain clothing. So why not find a way to make clothing designs that use the pose. We'll first design an interesting pose, pose that looks good. And the thing about poses is that they're going to accentuate one part of the body or the other. And how I always like I'm doing this with girls fashion just because whenever you see a guy do it, it looks really kind of gay. So anyway, I'm just gonna do this with we'll draw a girl and we'll draw her in some kind of here, look at my bum pose, kind of thing. And then I'll try and figure out, okay, what kind of clothing will we have her, what kind of clothing will we have her wear, um, in this pose? What clothing looks good in this particular pose? So that's the idea. So you'll notice that the first thing I did was I did this kind of a frame, right? Like I drew a frame, and now I can draw. Actually, I'm drawing relative to the frame. The nice thing about having a frame is that the frame kind of gives you this frame of reference, and I can I'm just be doing this. I'm gonna try and let's get some more perspective in there. Okay. Anyway, now that I have something like that, again, I say just go for the rough sketch. You don't really need to have something that is amazing and perfect and anatomically correct because we're caring mostly about the clothing. So uh, from there on, like, this is just for the idea sketch. It's not the final product. Um, you know, when I do an idea sketch like this, I do it with the purpose of, well, wanting to do it over again. It's not going to be a finished product by any means. I'm working in iterations, meaning that I'm going to do it again. Like it's destined to be done again, and this is not something that you would release to the audience or release to a client because they're going to look at it. They're going to say, "Oh my God, it's like, what terrible anatomy, what terrible perspective." And um, for the time being, all we're worrying about is just the design of the clothing rather than all the technical crap. It's more of a creative endeavor than it is a technical one. And so, okay, so now that I have that, you know, now I'm gonna just create a new layer and let's figure out, what kind of clothing looks good in this pose. Well, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lock the stencil of that, and let's figure out, what. Let's just not. I'm not even gonna worry about color at this moment. I'm just gonna worry about just the cut of the clothing. Let's just figure out, what clothing looks good in this pose. So if you want, you can go ahead and you can shroud everything, and then you can start figuring out, okay, well, obviously I want the face to be shown, and you know well, like, okay, so there's that bit of but that maybe what we don't want to do is we don't want to have like an out and out outright panty shot because everyone's doing panty shots these days. So instead, how about we do something that's kind of close. Okay, maybe that's a little too close. All right, so you can just cut down there. And let's see, what else do we want to do? Maybe I want to show, we want to look up in there. So you're trying to figure out, which parts of the clothing are going to be exposed and, which parts of the skin are going to be visible. And you'll probably notice that, I often don't show a lot of times my designs don't show a whole lot of skin. The reason for that is because if you show everything, like whenever I see, bikini or nude figures or anything like that, I don't know, it doesn't generate as much interest to me as something where, say, a girl's undressing, right? Because she's showing something to you. Like that's the whole power of striptease. Striptease, they just reveal one little part and they make you think, oh, what next? What more can I see? There's potential there. Whereas if you just show everything, like with a bikini, for instance, and it just hides only a little bit, there's not much left to the imagination. So anyway, we got our clothing cuts, and I'm gonna create another layer. I'm just throwing on layers as I go, and let's unlock that stencil and figure. Okay, so now I'm gonna try and figure out. Let's look at hair for a second. So um just a second. I gotta go back to this other layer here, and I gotta deal with the fact that I was sloppy and I painted with the skin color by accident instead of erasing when I should have. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just lock the transparency off and just fill it with black. Okay. And then I'll go back to that top layer. I'll unhide that. Okay, good. So now that I've got that, that should be much more visible. I can instantly start thinking, okay, well, about hair, what kind of hair looks good from this pose, so maybe I'll put this layer at the bottom, at the very bottom, in fact. So I'm going to think about hair. So in this case, I can have hair that goes like that. You'll notice that I don't try to really, do much in terms of, making the ends all jagged and whatnot. I'm just trying to figure out how do I want the hair to fly. So maybe I'll do something like this. All right. So the whole thing is, keep it like real simple. In this case, I think I'll just log the transparency off. I'll choose a slightly different color. I'm just using my color palette over here. So I can use something like that. I'll just go back up here. Since the transparency is locked, I can do that. Right. So that would be, what we do with the hair. The hair kind of looks nice in this position. It follows the movement, which I like. And then maybe I'm just going to keep on trimming it. I'm going to try and kind of tame this hair a bit. Right. But anyway, that you can basically keep cutting and hacking and slicing, for as long as you want. But I only have another 6 minutes to do this. So I'm going to look at the next bit of clothing. And, for instance, like this skirt, right? This skirt I can imagine, flapping this up this way. Right? So this is what you do. I can flap that one upwards. I can, pull that, downwards so now we can see inside there. And maybe I'll go back to this other layer here. I'll unlock the transparency and all that stuff we said about. Okay, here's what we can do. Even though it's a panty shot, I can still go into the very base kind of skin layer, and we can give her, I don't know what color. You can choose whatever color you want, really. I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna use this kind of a sky blue color here and just lock the transparency off and give her, here we are. Why is that not? Oh, because I've locked the layer completely. So I mean, you can give her some there's different styles of underwear, and this would be one of them. So, you don't have to always go with the same, style of underwear all the time. And sometimes it's nice to have that variety. Okay, so now that I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, here we are, thinking of more things that look good at this angle. I can put some slots in there. Slots. And then I'll go back to that back layer over here, and I'll try and, oops, use black. right? I'm just opening that up. And then I'm going to think about, I can probably put down yet another layer of color. So I'm just going to lock the transparency. I'm on this black layer with the boots and whatnot. And I'm not really wanting to think too deeply about color at the moment. I just want to quickly get going here because I only got 3 minutes left. So I'll find a color that works well. You can go black and white or black and gray. I'll go black and white. All right, so here we go. And I'm curving this according to perspective. And then you can, maybe I'll look at the top clothing as well. I'll see what I can do with that. Maybe I can, I can make a similar kind of flap like that. Go back up here. And, I have to unlock the transparency and just replay that stroke. Go over here. I'm just equalizing. So, this is how pose-driven clothing works. Let's see. I got another 2 minutes. I'm gonna lock the transparency again. Maybe what I'll do is I'll have an inner lining color of the clothing. So in this case, I will use maybe a lighter gray. And so I can light up the inner lining of the clothing. That looks kind of nice. I'm using a light gray on that inner lining. I'll do the same for the boots. But, I'm not trying to make the clothing everywhere different. All right, so now that I've done that, I've got about a minute left, a minute and 47 seconds or so. So I'm going to just take out my brush and I think I'll go on to this layer here. I'm going to lock the transparency and let's get some trim lines in there from the last lesson. And maybe what I'll do is I'll use the futuristic style of trim, which is to do 1/3 or 2/3 and to just cut accordingly. No, maybe I don't like that. Maybe I'll just do one like that and then I'll probably put one seam line down here. And then I'll probably take this line here and thicken that. Okay, so that looks kind of cool. Maybe I'll do the same over here. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. All right, so I got about a minute left now. But I mean, you now see just how quickly I can come up with clothing design. We can work so much faster when we throw anatomy and perspective to the wind. Okay, so that timer means I got exactly a minute before this thing cuts out. Or 50 seconds as I can see from the YouTube timer. All right, and then I'm just gonna fly like the wind. And maybe I'll do the same on this bottom layer here. Go back to this layer. So it's probably just gonna cut off, but whatever. But now you get an idea, I can just keep on going on and on with this thing until I'm satisfied with putting on all those trim lines. Go to the top layer and just have at it.